Cultural war, communism, and con artists. We're going to cover the gamut today. You're listening to the Propaganda Report. I'm Brad Binkley here with
Monica Perez.
And we have a special guest today. He was with us a few weeks ago, a man of passion, a man of the law, and America's most trusted lawyer. With us today, Legalman. Is that true, Legalman, that you are America's most trusted lawyer? Is there a ranking system?
That's really just something I kind of make up.
You know, I heard on one of your podcasts that you said that you were ranked number 3, I think, behind Hillary Clinton and one other person.
Chuck Schumer.
And I had to take a step back and say, is he kidding or is this a real
Yeah, because today it was Adam Schiff and Kamala Harris. So he just shifts it around of the least trustworthy lawyers out there.
Speaking of least trustworthy lawyers, I saw the trailer for the 2-day special event movie, James Comey movie, that Greg Daniels, is that who was playing?
Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels playing Comey.
From Dumb and Dumber.
It looks like just the most blatant piece of propaganda that you've ever seen.
I just don't want Comey's man spread. That's the only thing I cannot, just if he were playing himself, I would have to look at that for 2 hours.
What are your thoughts on Comey? He's so, he's such a nice guy and he always does the right thing and he takes the moral high ground. Do you believe in the way that he represents himself?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
For me, nobody rises to a level like that in government. And who's anything except for compromised. So, I mean, is he a nice guy? Can you be a compromised nice guy in the position he's in? I don't think so.
Should we tell Legalman our little backstory on him?
About Comey, about how when he was a kid,
The Ramsey
rapist, yeah.
So we invented this term, created persons, about people like him who were probably identified as teenagers by the deep state as having an uncanny ability to lie or no conscience or whatever. But the government had to pay millions of dollars to settle with the man falsely accused of being a rapist in Ramsey, New Jersey, because Comey, as a teenager, swore up and down he was the guy. And he wasn't.
Wow. Just so many weird things.
Yeah, anybody with a backstory, I think they're tapped.
Yeah.
That somebody's like, wow, this guy's good.
Right.
They're
it's just
discovered.
like all the people that the Clintons know who've been indicted and murdered and committed suicide. And I don't know, all these people been indicted and murdered. It's just always so weird.
Yeah. But when you bring that up now, it now gets thrown into QAnon bucket, and they say, oh, that's a QAnon crazy conspiracy theory, you anti-Semitic racist. And that's how they get people not to talk about it anymore.
Well, it's solid reasoning, so it's hard to argue with.
Chelsea Clinton's husband and Ivanka Trump's husband, both of them had fathers who went to jail for fraud, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Oh, I'm sure.
So many coincidences.
My father didn't go to jail for fraud.
Yeah. They compromise them. If you read the OSS manuals, the old OSS manuals, and the CIA manuals too, the more modern ones, they tell you what they train their agents to do in their morale field manuals, the ways that they compromise people. They blackmail people. They exploit them emotionally. They exploit their financial weaknesses, their addictions. They're very, very explicit in how they do this. They just say, oh, no, we only do this stuff to foreign countries, and we never would do this stuff to you guys, which to me is like having an invisibility cloak that you're only going to use on some people, but not on others, and it's totally...
Because you mean well.
Right, yeah, because you're a good-hearted guy, and you know what good and evil is, and you're on the side of good.
Yes.
And Trump is Batman.
So, yes, exactly. I want to ask you...
Billionaire by day, superhero by night.
Superhero by night. That's that is, I think, the belief among the QAnon people. What are your thoughts on QAnon?
Well, to me, QAnon is a pretty obvious psychological operation. The sort of counterterrorism group inside the NSA is called the Q group. I mean, they can't make it any more obvious than that. Yeah, I mean,
no way.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty obvious, and you listen to. I used to argue with them. Well, I wouldn't argue with them. I would address them. I've asked them for years and years to just provide even one single prediction that could be a falsifiable prediction within a time certain that Q is making. And there aren't any. And so really all they actually have is things where something happens and then they go back and say Q predicted it. Well, that's not the same thing as being able to say this right here predicts X will happen in the future. It's just Nostradamus quatrain nonsense where you just read into it. It's really actually very typical gypsy fortune-telling stuff.
Barnum statements.
I was just going to say it's a Barnum statement.
Yeah, it is a Barnum. They are Barnum statements,
a kind of
course.
Barnum statement.
Yeah, I mean, there was a great book written in the early 2000s. I wish I could remember the name of it. It was a guy, he actually got threatened. He wrote a fascinating book that disclosed all these different tricks that the gypsy fortune tellers use and they get raised with. And if you look at that book and then you look at what you do with things like Q, it's identical. And the people get sucked into it. And once you're sucked into something like that, even though you think once the facts start coming out, it seems more reasonable that, well, I guess I was taken. Actually, the people dig in more. That the more ridiculous it is, they'll just go more and more and more excuses and backflips in order to continue to hold on to the idea that they were right from the beginning. Right. And you can see the Q people doing that now. It's completely insane. I think they're up to like 175,000 sealed indictments now.
Yeah, it's 170,000 DHS.
Well, I've done the math. I used to do it for them all the time when it was only at like 90 or 100,000. I would just say, look, this is how many indictments have to be coming out every single day. How big of a legal staff do you need? Just logistically, how many witnesses have to be coming in and out of some location at some place where they're stamping just indictments day after day, just tons and tons of indictments. It's impossible to achieve that with no leaks and not at some location with a huge amount of transportation. And it's just an impossibility logistically. It's totally impossible.
Yeah. And when they make those public statements on social media or to their friends and family, that facilitates that commitment that.
Right.
I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy who with the influence principles.
Cialdini.
Yeah, that guy. When you make the public commitment to it, you're going to dig your heels in further to defend that position pretty much at all costs. Since
they've taken such ridiculous positions, they become even more sure to have to defend it because otherwise they look even more ridiculous to have to come back from it. And I've had countless supposed bets with people on Twitter, with different QAnon people over the last 3 years, and they've lost every single one of them. Nobody ever comes by to apologize, admit anything else. They never do. I actually have a real life friend who's a Q believer, and I got so sick of listening to his ridiculous Q crap that I said, fine, we're going to have a bet. And we had a bet, and the bet was basically for $1, kind of a trading place is $1, but also included in the bet was that he would have to admit that Q was a load of crap and he would no longer follow it. And if it was true, I would admit Q was true. Of course, I knew this was never going to happen, and I would be a believer. And when it came along and the time ran out, which was now like 16 months ago, exactly what I expected to happen, just making up excuses. Oh, well, I didn't know the time frame and all. And to this day, none of this stuff's happened, and he continues to believe it.
I've been wondering about that. Binkley, do you remember Maurice used to call into our show on the radio, and he was such a good ally in our truth and liberty quest. And then one day he starts talking about indictments. And then after that, I could never, his calls sucked after that. I was like, dude, I used to know stuff, and now it's all this nonsense that's never going to go anywhere, and we really lost him in the fight. That's
the problem with QAnon and how it's used. It's not that some of the things that people who follow it believe aren't true. There are pedophile rings. Jeffrey Epstein, Jimmy Savile. I don't know if I said his name correctly.
Yeah, that's right.
That stuff is real. But when they create this, false front QAnon, and they can kind of make it radical, and then it gets so out there that no person that you would want to influence to believe the theories would even touch it. They get disgusted by it. They run away from it. They can just throw every conspiracy theory in it. Anything they don't like, they can bury truths inside QAnon because people won't take it seriously.
So it neutralizes truthers.
Yeah.
and it taints
Well, it's classic
the truth.
disinformation. It provides
does
a
both.
lot of truth, but then it adds some piece in there that's completely ridiculous that when it's exposed, in effect, discredits all the other stuff. And that's just a very typical way that they disseminate disinformation. And what I find with Q people, and this guy he's not a super close friend of mine. I've known him for a long time. He was a client as well. But what I find with most Q people who are believers is that they didn't have the slightest damn clue what was going on until they found Q. And then they're so amazed and they imagine that nobody else understands what's going on. They think they're in the know. And the reality is they're way behind the 8 ball, but they're getting information. So they think this is all cutting edge disclosure. And Q, I don't think I've ever come across a Q disclosure that wasn't something that's super old news, just like Assange and Snowden and everybody else.
Yes.
There's nothing that they're disclosing that anybody who wasn't paying attention didn't know 10 years ago.
And it's not changing the course. It's not changing the direction. Look at what's happening, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I have a buddy too.
I have to ask Legal Man about that. Why?
Sorry.
It's okay. Why do you think people are buying all of this? Like, I just, it's just so crazy to me. I mean, I know why I'm taking it. I'm taking it because ultimately, this is my reasoning. Tell me if I'm wrong, but ultimately, I think you're going to tell me I'm right. They have the guns and they have the legal power to make my life miserable if I really start resisting these rituals. So I do them. I wear the mask. I'm not causing trouble. Tell me if I could get away with it, and I will. But a lot of people, they've basically manufactured advocacy among the population. They believe it. They buy it. They're living with it. They're yelling at you. I mean, I guess those people I understand more than the people who just don't notice that this is craziness coming from the government. Why do you think people are falling for this from all directions?
This insane mask wearing even after months and months.
Not even just the mask wearing, but this whole idea.
All of 2020. Why are they falling?
That there's a sickness that they should be extremely afraid of everywhere. I mean, people are afraid to go out. I live in California now, so people are afraid to go out.
Yeah. You know,
you just look around and just see that it's not true.
Obviously, you know, it's almost the only topic of conversation. We'll put it, it always comes up if I have a conversation with one of my friends, no matter when we have the conversation. It's like, how can anybody continue to believe this? How? If there's no evidence in their normal life, none.
Everything is exactly the same, except for people are walking around seeing ghosts.
Yeah, it's ubiquitous, and it's, I almost attribute it to Hitler, as though Hitler didn't base his propaganda model off of Edward Bernays and other models that we implemented here prior to that, which Edward Bernays boasted
the eugenicists started
book,
here,
too. Goebbels modeled his propaganda campaign against the Jews off of America's propaganda campaign during World War I, which we modeled off of the UK campaign also in World War I. But repetition. You say it over and over and over and over again. Even if you don't believe it at first, it just gets drilled into your mind and your unconscious mind that it just becomes truth, regardless.
So that's
of
what you
it or
think
not.
is that people
I think that's a big
just
factor in it. Yeah.
believe it because it's drilled into their heads. I mean, first of all, it has to be that regardless of all the polls that were taken over the years about 20% of Americans trust Congress, 15% of Americans trust the mainstream media, they actually trust. If they didn't trust at all, they would not. It's just faith in the government and the media. That's all this could possibly be.
Yeah, it's faith in the person that's on their team. And I think that tribal warfare element of it is important because you have to hate somebody in order to ignore the truth about yourself.
But they all agree that the thing is true.
Yeah.
Well,
they all agree that the left and the right all agree that the thing is true. That isn't true.
Yeah, the basic narrative is agreed to by both sides. And this is my big objection with Trump and those people who think that Trump's on their side. The man has said that wearing a mask is a patriotic duty.
Yeah.
to your other Americans. And he doesn't fire Fauci. He doesn't rescind the declaration of emergency. He doesn't speak truth about the issue. He still talks and couches everything in terms of being safe and safe together, and we have to do it in a safe way and follow the science. He still says all those things. And I think, for me, it's a combination of the repetition, of course. That's huge. The other thing is that a lot of people, they really can't think very clearly. Their own lives, nothing they think really makes any sense together. Most people's minds have an incredible amount of contradictory nonsense in them. And it comes out in every conversation. They'll say something and then they'll say something else that makes no sense with what they just said. And then you'll see they're behaving in a way that's totally hypocritical with what they just said they believed. And so I think that's a fundamental part of human nature, is that there's a lot of people are very confused in their thinking. And a lot of people don't value it.
You think that's a fundamental element of human nature? See, I feel like I've seen it get worse over the years, and
it's gotten worse.
More on the left, and now I see it on the left and the right.
Well, I agree. It's on both,
but I think it's gotten worse on the right. I think that used to be a bastion of rational dot
Well, I think the reason I only think that it's appearing to get worse on the right is because the conditions we're living in are getting so much worse that there's such a disconnect. I mean, when you think about someone like Barry Goldwater 60 years ago as a major party candidate, okay, that guy he's talking about a situation that's just fundamentally different than negative interest rates? 27 trillion it's such a disconnect now compared to what they used to say. At least kind of could be true. It kind of could. Now it's not even, it's so unhinged from any possible reality. It's absurd. They got us wearing masks talking about freedom. I mean, this makes no sense at all. And so I think that's the reason the people on the right are having such a hard time, is because they're continuing to mouth the same slogans about freedom and liberty and small government and reining things in and all this stupid crap they say. And in the last 50 years, in the last 25 or 30, it's just gone so off the charts that there's no way to even make a plausible case for it anymore. I mean, it's not even remotely arguable that any of that's true.
Yeah, a great watershed moment for me was when we invaded Iraq because a bunch of Saudis blew up the World Trade Center. That was the official narrative. And I'm like, but that doesn't even make sense.
Right. Right. The stuff they say doesn't make sense.
That was the untethering of the American mind. Yes,
getting
exactly.
People to accept something that has no logic to it and to not question. That is what they do in prisoner of war camps, is they beat people down until they just accept the irrational as rational and they no longer question it. And this is a massive brainwashing campaign. We're all connected to the devices all the time, but if you're not on your TV, you're on your phone. We got 3 or 4 devices, screens at our faces at all times.
Trauma helps that. That's so traumatic events are what allows that to happen. I think, right? Doesn't it?
Well, I think if you look at Yuri Bezimov, his great videos where he talks about how you demoralize a population, you demoralize, destabilize, crisis, normalize. And of course, we're somewhere in the destabilized crisis kind of mode right now, and we're obviously demoralized. And I think that these screens, you bring up a good point, that unless you are in your home and you don't have any media on at all, you're not looking at anything, that's the only way to really avoid the brainwashing that they're engaging in. As soon as you go outside, you'll start seeing idiots in masks. If you go into a store, you'll see the masks, you'll see the signs.
And the TVs on the walls in the back.
You'll see the TVs on the walls. You see the billboards with the little kid with a mask, be safe, and children's hospital crap, stuff like that. Everywhere you go, you turn on media, your phone, they send you notices of updates. At all times, this narrative is running at all times in people's heads. And most people sit around at all times and just have the TV on in the background, which that bothers me. I can't do that.
I don't like that
and
either.
people sleep to the TV.
They sleep
with podcasts.
Bingo. And so it's just all the time. And you can't get away from the PSAs and all the large corporations. They've all rerun and made up all their new ads that show the idiots with the mask on. I saw one the other day. The guy was working on a computer alone in some room. He had a stupid mask on. I was like, this is brainwashing, and it's effective. But when you disconnect people, when they made everybody stay home and therefore reliant upon media of some sort, where you got to text your friends, you're looking at a screen at all times, I just think that has a fantastically demoralizing effect on your mind that you're just not capable of handling. I just think the average person cannot resist it.
I think that they had the Obama phone for that reason. Like, they had to get everybody a phone. They couldn't have the homeless people being the only people who could think. They had to make sure that everybody had a phone. And then and I think it's very significant that they are really not yielding at all on bars and churches. Like, those are the two things that just cannot open. And those are the two places where people congregate and chat.
Right. Massive First Amendment violation. That's one of the most important rights we have.
The First Amendment.
The very most important right we have is to be able to peaceably assemble so we can discuss and organize against any type of governmental oppression. And now they have it such that all of that organization all has to run through electronic media, which can be overseen by government, which is overseen by government, which is tightly controlled and manipulated. And that is the fact that nobody is speaking out about that. Nobody in government is up in arms. Nobody in the supposed conservative movement is upset about any of that. It just shows you how fully controlled it all is. Just every nook and cranny, they've got dirt on all these people.
Yeah. And it's not just that, but Binkley and I have talked about how they train AI this way. I had Leo, some AI, ask me a question like, can you tell me at what category this article is in? And but I didn't catch what it was doing. So I answered the question. And it's like, thank you. I'm smarter now. I was like, what?
Right.
Yeah, they can listen to sarcasm and humor now. They have casual conversation, which they never had before. And that's what makes AI be able to deceive you.
Oh, yeah. And I get a lot of people constantly asking, this whole idea that the government would never do such a thing like we have now. And if they were going to do it, why wouldn't they just kill everybody? It's just always the same very thin thinking. It's they don't think with a lot of depth. And one of the main reasons I suspect they ran this absurd Event 201 go live was to allow AI to learn. What is it that scares people? What do we need to do? Where are the places that we need to push? What kinds of things convince people? What kinds of things are not credible to people? And they gather just an incredible amount of data at this point on how to scare and manipulate and move the population around all over the world. And so now they're ready if they're actually going to release something, or in case there is something actually happens, they're ready to go.
That's what they've been expecting to potential. That's what I worry about is that something real is going to come out. And everybody is in this insanely vulnerable position right now.
And I've said, look at what they're capable of doing. Look at the amount they can move the society, the culture, the norms, what's in people's minds with what is in effect a non-event. Imagine how easy it will be to push people with an actual event where there's actually people dying. If you can do this when people really aren't dying, still don't know anybody who's sick. If you can move people to walk around with a mask on while they walk their dog over nothing.
Yeah, people haven't had acute trauma. See, that's the thing. I say, do you know anybody who's sick? And now people are like, I know someone who's sick. They tested positive, but they definitely had it. I'm like, but if you had everybody walking around like in a historical plague, assuming those stories are true, where every single person had lost one or two people in their lives and had that trauma walking around, I could see being more vulnerable. But I think that they're further along than maybe they even thought, in that if you look at the Boston Marathon bombing or Katrina, many other of these really traumatic events, I could see in real time, Binkley too, and it's the Sandy Hook, stuff like that, where you could see in real time how they were testing people. Like the Boston Marathon bombing was a great example. They got 9,000 federal troops. I think it was the National Guard or something. And they just closed down the entire city and walked from door to door and told people to get in, get down with long guns and everything, and saw that everybody did it. And I think that was a lot of information there. And of course, yeah, now they have tons and tons of information, but it's amazing to me how, well, it's because Trump is in office. If it were Hillary, it would not have been this easy.
For sure.
Yeah. And
totally impossible without Trump.
Yeah, people aren't reacting to reality. They're reacting to their perception of reality. And that perception is controlled, especially right now, by the powers that be. And they flood every single channel with their propaganda messaging. Like the bathroom wall. You go in the bathroom, there's a poster on the wall, it's propaganda messaging. It's on the side of the bus that passes you by, on the T-shirt, the Black Lives Matter T-shirt of all the NBA players, the basketball court. Your mom is probably feeding you propaganda.
Not mine.
Wow.
She's the last. She's our
channels,
last hope.
But yeah, it's unwitting for most people, but they just flood. I mean, they flood every channel with it. And social media especially is the most powerful tool for not only the data collection and creating the personalized messages that the AI can just send people messages directly to affect them emotionally, but in the spread of that propaganda across the world in an instant. Social media is Edward Bernays and any propagandist's wet dream by the way they can communicate across the world in an instant. I know you've talked about social media's role in all this. Now, what is social media doing right now to help them spread this propaganda and create all this chaos?
Well, I think one of the things it does an incredible amount. There's no way this is possible without social media and smartphones. But one of the things they're able to do with the illusion of popularity by having all these fake followers for people, all these fake likes, fake retweets, fake conversations they have, they pop in, and as soon as somebody, because most people will never comment. The vast majority of people are never even going to post a reply to something. But what they do is as soon as someone does post a reply, they run their AI bot out there to challenge it. And so that scares the vast majority of people who are even afraid to even make any kind of post. And this doesn't even include all the ways that they shadow ban, they eliminate channels, they kookify things, they run all these so-called celebrities and other quote experts out to make all these comments, and they personalize it, and they act like they're just so involved in this and such an important movement. None of that's possible without social media. But the human desire to be part of something that's bigger than themselves is really fundamental. That is a very fundamental thing. People want to be attached to something that's bigger than themselves. And this movement, this idea that they're helping to save people. That's how they've positioned all this, is that we're alone together, we're in it together, that by wearing a mask, they're somehow a hero, that by sitting around with a mask on, that they're a hero. Well, that's very appealing to a large number of people who have pretty sad sack lives. And this is a way for them to kind of feel important, even though it's totally imaginary. And so I think they glom onto that, and they're not about to let go. And
well, you know what else? Just
doesn't matter how little danger there is. That's irrelevant to people.
What annoys me, I always try to give the benefit of the doubt to like people fall for this stuff. They don't spend enough time figuring it out. But the fact that so many people get off on the self-righteous indignation against others who are just minding their own business. So people are walking around without a mask because this thing is ridiculous. And then the masker is angry and feels threatened by the passive person. I mean, it's a masterful psychological operation. That you feel attacked by someone walking around minding his own business, and the whole community will stand with you and beat that person to death.
The CDC sending out recommendations to retailers telling them, well, your minimum wage employees are probably there's going to be people come into your store without a mask, and they're going to try and beat and strangle your minimum wage employees.
Right.
Here's what you do. You have them do conflict resolution. They wouldn't be working at a retailer as a minimum wage employee if they were conflict resolution experts. You can't just train them to do that. Hey, do some conflict resolution with these people that come in. But it creates an atmosphere where this minimum wage employee sees somebody come in without a mask, and they're instantly anxious, and they're going to be more likely to manifest that conflict simply by sending out these recommendations. It's totally demonizing people who aren't just bending a knee and submitting. It's unbelievable, really. And the masks are so uncomfortable. There's nobody walking around saying this feels good.
It's definitely the kidney thing. I get sick. It's breathing your own carbon dioxide. It's not even the lack of oxygen. It's that it's like you're turning a car on in the garage. Like you just can't. It's not good for you. And I think that's what it's for, to be not good for you.
Yeah. And to something you were speaking on a moment ago, this mass of people, or seemingly mass of people, that's aided by all these bots makes it appear as though there's more people who believe these radical beliefs than there are people who are more normal. But that's not the reality. The problem is it creates this spiral of silence. With the spiral of silence, it's a sociological thing where people don't believe that anybody else agrees with them because they hear all this crazy shit, and so they don't say anything to their friends because they think they're in the minority, when in reality is most of the people that they know have similar beliefs but are also staying silent out of fear of being canceled because they have this massive speaker that is controlled by the radicals and the media. So they can just create a complete flip on what reality actually is.
Yes. I have this is why I'm so convinced that Trump is in no way on our side, because if he was, he could combat this by telling people to stop wearing the masks, canceling the declaration of emergency, and saying that this is insanity, and people would feel a lot better about not doing it. But I've noticed even in my own practice how hesitant people are to question anything that appears to have authority behind it. And I've had lots and lots of different clients that have come in and they're having issues, and they're having some kind of medical issue or something. And I'll listen to their thing and I'll ask them some questions about it. And it's incredible. They'll say, well, did you ask your doctor? Oh, no, I didn't ask him. So you didn't ask your doctor. You were basically your doctor is giving them instructions to do something that they're so scared of, they're so concerned about, that they're now asking a lawyer what they should do about it. Yet they were hesitant to even question the doctor. And that is not uncommon. I find that all the time in all sorts of situations where people, if somebody they perceive to be in a position of authority or perceive to have some kind of area of expertise that they don't imagine they have, they will not even ask a question of the person, even if they're being asked to do something that they think might even threaten their life. They still don't even just ask the guy, hey, well, what are you talking about, dude? I mean, tell me exactly what it is this stuff is. No, they won't ask it. They won't ask. And if people won't even ask in a situation that personal, the idea that the average person is ever going to speak up and say, well, what's the story with these damn masks? How is it actually going to work? I mean, what is the mask actually doing? And if I lift it, have I ruined it? Can I put it on at any time? Or if I wear it slightly wrong, what if someone else moves their... Nobody will ask a basic question.
Do I have to
They just won't.
And the thing about doctors specifically is it goes two ways. So my father actually died of a surgery that he did not need, should not have gotten. My sister's a nurse practitioner. She said that. And he said, it's on the schedule. And we said, well, just talk to if you ask the question, he has to answer it. And he would not. He was like, he knows best, whatever. Totally predictable. It was very tragic. But the point for that is that my father had this idea about respecting a guy, not questioning it. It was insulting, disrespectful. And then on the other side, it's almost like doctors are trained somehow. I don't think they maybe are told expressly, but they will. When I questioned my doctor about the Gardasil vaccination for my kids, my daughter, he started to explain to me how people once believed in werewolves. Like he literally, that was like, you're a fucking idiot. And I was just like, I'm not an idiot. I read the book. I don't know about werewolves, but I'm sure that Gardasil was not tested properly. And he just wouldn't answer the question. And I was going to give him the book. It's like a totally well-respected book, peer-reviewed even. But he doesn't want to hear it. But I feel like they talk to you. I once asked my doctor, I used to smoke cigarettes. I said, I'm down to 9 cigarettes a day, and I cannot find any studies that say that smoking fewer than 10 cigarettes a day is bad for you. And he just started laughing. And I said, I mean, do you have any studies like that? Because I know you're on the board of whatever. And he just started laughing. They're out there. I said, yeah, but I can't find them. If you send me one, I will never smoke another cigarette again. And he got his little tape recorder out and he says, patient doesn't believe it, that smoking 9 cigarettes is bad. And I was like, why do you have to laugh in my face? How is that your argument? But that is, I feel like it's typical in that field. And then as I see how all powerful it is to have the government whose your best interest is not their primary concern, for them to have total power over health, specifically psychiatric health I used to be worried about, but physical health now, that seems to me like the most powerful weapon tool they can use against us. And it's one that kind of went by the wayside. Oh, don't you think there should be an FDA? And I would say no. I'd have more faith in CVS worrying about its reputation than saying the FDA said it was okay. Yeah. And now it just feels like the most powerful sector forever.
My mom was diagnosed with a rare disease, or less than 500 known cases of it in the United States. And she was told by every doctor that we saw that she'd be dead in 2 years. This was 17 years ago. And they still don't know hardly anything about that disease. But had we not asked questions all the time and questioned because here was their recommendation. You got 2 years. We don't know what to do. There you go. So when they start telling you that you're going to die and you don't have any options, then you have no choice but question them, or what they say happen will happen.
And then you look at Stephen Hawking, and everybody who gets Lou Gehrig's disease dies in a couple of years, except for, the most important person in the world, right? Supposedly. Right. So they might know more than they're telling you.
Stephen Hawking. I'm very suspicious of Stephen Hawking.
He never said anything, right?
Just very suspicious of the idea that the supposedly most brilliant man in the world can only speak to this little box.
Right.
I mean,
totally.
How do we know what he's actually not saying is, hey, I'm not saying that. This is bullshit. They're lying for me. They're torturing me. We have no idea.
Oh my gosh. How tortured would you be screaming inside your mind your whole life while they put propaganda out through you? That'd be...
Well, one of my favorite stories about Stephen Hawking, not like I knew much about him, because most of his stuff is just made up crap. Black holes. It's all made up crap. But the thing that's so funny to me was that he actually divorced his wife.
Yes.
He married another woman. I was like, if that's not the sort of, remember this very first Chappelle show where he was the black white supremacist and he divorced his wife when he found out that he was a black man?
Yeah.
Because he couldn't bear that idea. I mean, to me, it was just, I was like, hold it. You're Stephen Hawking. You're in a wheelchair. You can't even talk. What? I mean, what kind of relationship could they even be having? It's just.
Yeah.
It must have been set.
So
I mean, it's plausible that it was set up like that to make the narrative feel like he has a real.
Yeah. How could it? I mean, it's just so
internal
suspicious.
life.
So suspicious. Unbelievably suspicious that the guy is talking through this computer-generated thing. I forget the fact that like I said, black holes. All that stuff's just made up nonsense. But the idea that he would have to speak through this thing, so we really have no idea whether it's his thought. I just thought, to me, that's the kind of thing that they're punking us. That it's so ridiculous that they're putting it out there to see if people will accept something that ridiculous.
They make it stranger and stranger.
That I wonder about when you said, I thought you said you think that revelation of the method is a part of what's happening here. And I feel like that's,
definitely.
But if people are so stupid, then how does that even count? Or let's explain to people what revelation of the method is.
People can understand that this is a revelation of the method.
Why don't you?
Well, revelation of the method has a couple of different parts. One, revelation of the method is very effective for the subconscious of the masses. They see it. It's just like good subliminal messaging. If the subliminal message has to be adjusted to the type of population you have, and you have to send different kinds depending on the population, and it has to be just below that conscious recognition. And like the very most famous recent one that they blew was the new Wendy's girl when they rolled her out. Remember how they rolled rolled out the new Wendy's mascot, the stupid redhead thing.
Yeah.
And everybody immediately saw that her necklace said mom. Okay. They immediately saw that, but they couldn't pull it back at that point because they had said it was an accident. Okay. That's a classic example of misjudging the market as far as how much conscious recognition they have of something. And revelation, the method they use in the public is very similar in that vast majority of the people, it just sinks into them. The contradiction is there. It's absorbed by their subconscious mind, but it has the added benefit of people like you or me who can see it. And then we also see that nothing happens. That these bad actors are out there. And that's what QAnon is, a very, very elaborate revelation of the method operation. In my opinion, that's what it is. It shows people all these terrible truths that they can go then check out. And then they see that nothing actually happens to the perpetrators. And so they become demoralized and the perpetrators grow in power based upon the fact that they seem invincible. Because look how obvious this is. My God, they're doing X and Y and Z and nothing happens to them. Oh my God. That's very helpful.
What is the true nature and origin of the power that the people who are getting away with stuff or running the show or just in the position of power by default? I mean, can you articulate just a scenario of what is the true nature of that power, where it came from? Because it's there. You can see it. It's in action right this second. It's in lockstep. The whole world is in lockstep and locked down because Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum guy, or somebody else, or a bunch of people, or some lizard or whatever, do you have an articulatable vision of that?
For me, I think it's a combination of both just standard, pragmatic, carrot and stick kind of stuff. And in addition, I think there's a very large element of this sort of black magic that I don't understand, but I suspect is legitimate just because it's been such a long time. They use a combination of psychological stuff that they understand about people. But it's been running so long that I've read a ton about this conjuring and the Twilight language and all these different things they say they use. And I haven't studied how they do it. And I suspect anything that's in the public realm would be not true anyway. Mm-hmm. It would be like astrology, probably something to it. Crystals, probably something to it, but what we know about it's complete garbage. And I suspect that it's the same with this black magic, the spirit cooking and all these things they kind of ease out there. They are able to harness that kind of mass psychological traumatic event. They're able to use it in some way, in some energetic way, to give themselves some additional power. But I think the vast majority of workaday stuff that they're doing, it's just simply a matter of walking up to you and having a guy come up to you when you're walking your dog and showing pictures of your kids and saying it'd be a terrible thing if you didn't do X, Y, and Z, be very disappointed. and you get the message. And if you don't get the message, well, then your kid dies. Your car, you have a car accident. You keep escalating until they get through to you. And that's pretty simple to do, really.
There's
Travis
a con that actually
Kalanick
does exactly that, where they call old people and they get the information about their grandchild, and they give them enough information to make it seem legitimate, like they know their grandchild, and then they say, we have kidnapped your kid or your grandchild, and until you transfer this amount of money to us, we are not going to let them go, and we will kill them if you don't. Only to find out after the grandparents give all the money to this person that the kid was at the friend's house.
Right.
And none of it was true. They had just done information gathering.
Right. Threatening people is extremely effective, and also in combination with the carrot, because they have virtually unlimited money. And so you're offered the choice of go along and have a fantastic material life. And you screw your people over, but there's a guy who's waiting in line. If you don't do it, bad things are going to happen to you and your family, and you're not going to prevent it because we got 50 guys waiting and ready to do it. They're ready to sign right now and take your position. I mean, how do you defend against something like that?
There's an example of the guy, I suspect this is an example of that. The guy the founder of Uber, Travis Kalanick. Everybody thought he was an asshole, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. It was no big deal. It was funny. And then there was this thing where it was called Operation Greyball, and he set up at Uber a thing that would block the authorities from tracking drivers and passengers. They wanted to use a backdoor into the information, and he said no. He wouldn't do it. And this is what happened. So then that's when they started to try to get rid of him. I don't know if you remember Uber, get rid of him, He wouldn't step down, and he had all that money and power. And you know what happened? You know why he stepped down? No. His parents were in a freak accident they lived on a lake. They boated every day. It was crystal clear, no bad weather. They boated every day. And they got in a horrible accident. The mother died. The dad barely survived. And he just stepped down the next day. And I immediately, when I saw that story, I said, I bet Travis Kalanick is not married and does not have kids, that these are his closest relatives. Because if he had a wife or child, that would have been the one, But I said, that's got to be his closest relative. And he was gone the next day.
Well, everybody's probably read, what is it? Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Everybody, I mean, the systems are well known, and they bribe you. If they can't bribe you, they threaten you. And if you don't give in to the threats, then they bring in the leg breakers. And
so many are insiders, like Ronald Reagan, JFK, Nixon, I think Gerald Ford. I think all these guys are insiders.
Reagan was an informant for the FBI before he became a politician.
Reagan was for SAG.
Yeah.
So if I just feel like even if you're an insider, if you begin to think that you have power, autonomy, then they show you the Zapruder film.
Well, I think I said it last time, but I don't remember because my early onset Alzheimer's. If people think that the Secret Service is there to protect the president, they're delusional.
Oh yeah,
they're just there to be close to him. That's all it is, and. This is a very powerful, in effect, mafia that runs things, and that's the way you get things done. If you have a crime you want solved, if you have the option to go to the mob, if you have a mob connection, say, hey, look, had X, Y, and Z happen, you're going to go ask them. They're going to find out what happened in a couple of hours? Certainly the next day they'll know. And that's the way it works, is that when you're not constrained by these fake rules with the, we got to obey the rights, this and that, you can get stuff done. You go up and stick a gun in somebody's face, they're probably going to comply. Now, that's not the way I behave, but if it works and they don't have to fear the fact that the police are going to come get them because they basically are, in effect, the police, well, that's... How are you resisting that? I mean, it doesn't really work to resist that. There's no system you have. You've got to have your own backup. They have to know they stick a gun in your face. Oh, even if they kill you, well, your guys who live on will come and get them. That's it. Yeah. That's the only system that can ever protect you from the way the world actually operates. Right. And that's the reason I push so hard on it in sort of, that's why I even started my podcast is a whole reason. It's because people need to understand how dangerous it is to believe that the system is what they're told. Yeah. It's a very dangerous situation to be in.
They create this set of rules that the majority of the public follows, and they're often based on morals, and we're surrounded by these rules and they're embedded in us from the time that we're born, that most people refuse to believe that others would not abide by these rules and would just operate freely outside of them. This is how the pedophile rings, Jimmy Savile, people refuse to believe it no matter how much evidence or how many times people come and report it, because they know that they would not act in that way and nobody they know would. So they don't think that others could as well, which I think, well, I just lost my train of thought, but I speak to something that you said in one of the podcasts I listened to maybe a few days ago, where you were talking about the importance of knowing the truth about this stuff. Even if you can't take on this global villain by yourself, by knowing the truth of it, it enables you to operate within it a lot more safely and enables you to do things that you previously might not have been able to do.
Yes. It's a hugely important thing to understand the actual system, even if you can't do anything about it. It really is, because it's unbelievably dangerous to wake up in the wrong order. You wake up, you imagine, oh, this is corruption. I'm going to go to my boss. Okay, you don't understand the way the system works. Oh, I'm going to go to the FBI. Oh, I'm going to go. You're screwing yourself if you don't understand what those things are actually there to do. And you can screw yourself in your profession. You can put yourself in a lot of danger. It's just the world doesn't operate the way people think it does.
And
if, if you were given a classical education, they used to have what was called the Great Tradition. And I think Albert Nock was always lamenting the loss of the Great Tradition. And it was a way to actually educate people and to read these classics. And what they tell you in there very clearly, the way the world actually works. It really does work like that. The golden rule, that's a fantasy. That's something they give the public. The world doesn't operate on the golden rule. You and I might, with the people we love and trust. Of course we do. But you don't give your trust and treat all these people as though they're going to reciprocate when they're in a position of power and they can simply force you to do something. That's just idiotic. And to do so is beyond naive. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. And they take advantage of you.
The critical thing that people don't, I think, understand is how quickly behavior changes when there's no consequences.
Oh, yeah.
Hinckley's talking about morals. But if you really disconnected all consequences from your behavior, if you didn't believe in God and did not think that the civil authorities could do anything to you, you might be a pedophile. You might have human hunting parties. Like the stuff they say about these people, it goes hand in hand with this idea, this megalomania, I think, of I'm so rich, I'm so powerful, I only have 80, 90 years until I'm uploaded, and I'm going to push the envelope because why not?
There's no doubt. There's certainly a piece of that. The other part is that most people just aren't willing to do the kinds of things that these people who rise to levels of power are. I mean, how much are you really willing to do in order to, say, take some old lady's money and leave her penniless? Are you going to do that? How bad of a position do you have to be in before that's an option you're going to take? How bad of a position do you have to be in before you're just going to walk up to somebody and stomp on their dog's head until you kill them? Okay, these are things that normal people, the vast majority of the people, are just so outside their realm of thinking. But the people who are in real positions of power, that's the kind of thing that they don't even hesitate. That's not something where they have to think about, well, am I willing to leave that old lady penniless, for me to get some? No, that's not even something they think about. Am I willing to stomp on somebody's little dog and kill them right in front of their kid and leave them with a scarred memory? Yeah, that's a no-brainer for them. That's the thing. You can't get in. I can't. Nobody who's a normal human being can relate to that mindset. Just like I can't relate to somebody who tortures animals or has sex with children. I can't relate to that, but I know it's a fact of life. I know those things do happen. I know those people do exist. And I know that if you really want to rise in the levels of power, you have to be ruthless, because very soon you are going to run up against somebody who is ruthless. And if you're not willing to be that ruthless, you're going to lose. That's just the bottom line. You will lose. And that's the main reason I'm not involved in crime, because I'm not willing to do it. So I'll never be successful. It will never work. I will never be a successful criminal, because I will come up against crazy thugs who have no problem putting a gun to some innocent lady's head and shooting them.
And you can see
it's crazy.
How far they're willing to go, and how many people, and how easy it is to get anybody with any kind of power to go along with that stuff when you see the economic destruction that they are bringing down through this COVID policy. I mean, many people will die. I mean, financial collapse of somebody with a family, the entire middle class, anybody who has a small business getting wiped out, any of this stuff. Kids who can't handle it, it's really.
Well, there's endless examples, though. I mean, the supposed good guys in World War II, they made a decision to intentionally firebomb the Japanese cities. So they just dropped these gasoline bombs to catch all these homes on fire and just to burn God knows how many people. Same in Dresden. They created a firestorm. People don't understand. There's 70, 80 mile an hour winds pulling people into those fires, just sucking people down the street into a fire.
Of people. How many people?
And they were old people. They were old people, women, children, sick people, injured people. Those weren't fighting men in those cities. It was just a terror campaign. But they were willing to do that. They spent what, 10 years dropping gelatin gasoline on innocent people, 10,000 miles away over a phony baloney communist story. Every war involves that. We're dropping missiles on people all the time. There is absolutely no limit to what they will do. And you look at these crazy dictators that they've killed 30 million people or 100 million people. But that's just how many people they needed to kill. If they needed to kill more, they would have. And the only reason you don't see that in this country is because it's not necessary. They're able to obtain power without having to do that at this time. But if that's what it required, that's what they'd be doing. They wouldn't change. They wouldn't hesitate. You think these are good people because they make a speech? It's ridiculous. It's a delusion that good, honest people like who have a conscience, a moral conscience like you or me, or the vast, vast majority of people, they just can't relate to it. And since they can't relate to it, they just simply can't believe it's true. It's just, they refuse to accept the reality that's right in front of their face.
Right in front of their face.
The Scientologist, Danny Masterson, he used to be on that show, that 70s show. For the past few years, he's been getting accused of rape by multiple women, and it keeps getting buried, and then the story will come out whenever they want to make a Me Too splash, then it'll get buried again, and he'll be fine. Although I think not long ago, somebody might have actually filed charges against him, but over the course of the past 4 years, and he's with the Church of Scientology, the dogs of his accusers have been murdered. His accusers are finding their dogs killed.
How?
Wasn't it Kathleen Willey?
Doing it.
Didn't she have her dog killed? Didn't Kathleen Willey have her dog killed? I think back in the 90s. Same kind of thing, right? It's not complicated. Like I said, you stick guns in people's faces, and you get results. It's just, normal people aren't willing to do that. Yeah. Like I said, they're not, I'm going to do that in order for me to get a little bit ahead. I'm going to threaten some innocent person. No, I'm not going to do that.
To tell you the truth, I never understood the truth about 9/11 for one reason only, and I would say it. I would say, I don't believe they would do that. And then I saw the Boston Marathon bombing. They did that. And I saw it. And I actually saw what they were doing because I just spent hours all night looking things up and comparing pictures or whatever. And I was like, holy shit. Those guys work for the CIA. But I didn't believe it.
But they made up the Gulf of Tonkin event. And then they fought a war where God knows how many people they killed over there and how many Americans they got killed and wounded and maimed and destroyed people's lives. They knew that was made up. And yet they conduct it anyway. Who in their right mind okays a firebombing campaign? There is no excuse for bombing civilians. I'm sorry.
Right. No.
People used to ask me.
Started that.
He did. Of course he did. But they blamed he was a terrible guy. But
I know.
It's so outrageous to me when I look at these kinds of things. It's the same kind of thing with nuclear weapons. Okay. I'm sorry, but I'm not okay with nuclear weapons. Well, we got to have them to defend ourselves. Oh, are we going to use them? I'm not okay with sending a nuclear bomb over to a country to blow up hundreds of thousands or millions of people just because, even assuming some psychopath got a hold of them over there. And okay, well, if they're coming to blow me up, I'm not going to go blow other people up. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm not okay with that because I don't control whether we shoot off a nuclear bomb. The people sitting over there don't control it. But this is the mindset that's been put into people that it's like, well, we got to defend ourselves. Well, really?
Because
so if you're in public and a madman comes over and he's about to shoot you, are you just going to gun down everybody else in the area? No, it doesn't make any sense. Why am I going to blow up innocent people because some other guy is going to try to shoot me? And they can't expand that out. There's so much confusion as soon as you add this country layer to it. There's so much confusion about it. But there's absolutely no justification to have nuclear bombs. None. If they want to blow us up, then they need to blow us up. Okay, that's what happens. Nobody's going to do that. You can't come over and take the country. There's nothing left to take. It's gone. And so it's the same kind of thing with the 911 or anything else. The people just can't believe they would do it. And that's why you have to bring it down to a very, very small scale. Very small scale. Are you going to go over and stomp on the dog and kill somebody's dog in front of their kid in order to get something to do? No, you're not going to go do that. Well, that's literally nothing for these people. Nothing. Of course they would do that. So you can't even comprehend such a minor thing to them. Of course you can't understand how they would just kill millions of people. You can't understand it.
I mean, they'll suck babies' blood to try and stay younger. So
God knows what they might. They very well may. I mean, I've seen those stories. Of course, there's no way to confirm it, but I mean, would it surprise me? Literally nothing would surprise me. I mean, there is no story they could tell me that would surprise me. Just the same as there's absolutely no crazy sexual kink you could tell me that would surprise me. I don't care what it is. Someone has it as a sexual kink. As insane as it may seem.
If you can describe it in words, it's happened.
There you go. Right. Oh, you're eating pudding? Oh, I love that. I love eating pudding.
The two topics there. There's sexual kink webcams where people who have foot fetishes will watch these women stomp gerbils to death.
Sure.
Oh, my word.
And they make a lot of money doing it.
There you go.
Who thinks of that?
That's what I'm saying.
Night after a strip club, he's like, step on this gerbil, baby.
Dude.
Right.
As soon as this sickness thing started, I was like, cough in my face. I didn't mean it, but I mean, but now I've done my research and I really don't care. But like I just thought, living dangerously in the time of
not having a mask
that's
on,
the
you're
thing.
like a rebel. So if you see a chick without a mask on, you can kind of lift your eyebrows.
Hey man, she'll do anything. Watch your gerbils around that chick.
Living dangerously.
Let me ask you this: you talk on your podcast about how Fauci and these other figures who are given this platform, and they go up there and they make these blanket assertions without actually proving anything, how they're never cross-examined, and how it would be if they were cross-examined. Who would you most like to cross-examine?
Well, Fauci, for one, would be a great one to cross-examine just because he's their lead person. He's their lead person. And whoever is the person they're claiming they're using as a front man, maybe he's been discredited now. I don't know. I mean, there's so much nonlinear disinformation released, but any public health official who's taking a strong position, and I would also love to take any of the governors who are coming out, like Gavin Newsom or someone like that, who's just running around acting like an expert.
Too.
Excuse me?
Andrew Cuomo, who I think
there's another one. I mean,
plotted to kill old people. I think that's what he did. That's where the spikes are. New York is supposed to be this bastion of conformism, and that's where that crazy spike in deaths came from.
Right. Yeah. I mean, anybody who's pushing it, any of the governors who are pushing it, and any of the public health experts who are pushing it, they need to be sworn in, and they need to take an actual position. And actually, I've already done, but I think it's my next Thursday or Sunday or something. I've got one coming out. It's going to elaborate on that same exact kind of thing. That the purpose of swearing somebody in and cross-examining them. I get a lot of people say, "Well, they're still never going to tell the truth." It's just the same stupid kind of just very silly, not very deep thinking. The purpose of cross-examination, a situation like this, it's not to get them to tell us the truth. They're never ever going to tell us the truth. The only purpose of it is to make sure they have a single position. That's it. Just one single position. And then they have to be able to back it up. And they're never going to be able to. We all know that they're not going to be able to take a position where they're going to be able to show science that's somehow unquestioned that mask wearing works. There's not even any studies it works. All the studies show that healthy people wearing masks no good. And so the point is not to get them to tell me the truth and to confess that they've been lying. It's to get them to admit that they really don't know what's going on.
What would you say to Fauci?
Because if they don't know what's going on, if they can't really tell us like they claim to, like they imply, like they're constantly implying that this is real science that it's actually going to help. When you get them sworn in and they have to answer questions, what will actually happen is they will have to hedge, and they really won't be able to take much of a categorical position. And if there's no categorical position, then they don't have a basis to lock us down, because they don't have anything that's solid. And so it's not a matter of forcing them to tell us the truth and admit that they can't work. The fact is, they're not going to be able to say anything categorical. It's just not going to be possible with the state of the, quote, science that exists. It just isn't possible.
What kind of question? You got Fauci here. I think this would be helpful to people who are trying to communicate with their friends who don't really know what's going on either, but they just kind of repeat things that Fauci and others say. What kind of questions would you ask them?
Well, I would definitely want to first you have to get them to present something. What is their position? Are they claiming that the mask actually prevents you getting the illness? You're not going to get it if you wear the mask. He won't tell you that you won't get it. And so you can just constantly ask, well, so what percentage is it reduced by? And how is it you've gone about making sure this is the case? What evidence do you have that it reduces it by 50% or whatever number he gives? He won't have anything because there is nothing. And so it's just an idea that the mask prevents it. And the fact is, he said in the beginning, you don't need to wear a mask. And in fact, the medical journal article that he posted, that he signed off and says the masks don't do anything.
Yeah.
And so but it's always right back to the same thing. See, people imagine that that they've made all these very clear statements, and that's the implication you get from these Barnum statements about saving lives and protecting, alone together, and social distancing works and safe together, all that crap. It's because it's very vague, and if you get something very specific, they're not going to have it. That's why they keep it very vague.
Yeah,
and so it'd be very easy to cross-examine them.
Another word for it, they call it glittering generalities. They say the vague terms that have an emotional impact but can be manipulated into meaning something else because there's no real concrete picture of what these terms like liberty and democracy actually are. It's classic demagoguery. It's just the standard thing. This is used in almost every industry. It's a great sales technique. This is how you sell people, timeshares. You have them imagine in their life, they're going to have this fantastic vacation with their super dysfunctional families, not going to be dysfunctional when they're on vacation. They're all going to love them and be so happy. It's just something they put an idea in somebody's mind. And then they sell into that idea. And that's all any of this is. This selling of this concept that you're saving lives by wearing a mask. It's no different than any other sale. It's just a sale.
And people are so committed to the belief of it. I mean, then you've got these ordinary people will go to the mat advocating for it and hostilely towards you as the bad guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it becomes they become so identified with it. They are the kind of person who wears a mask and makes sure and protect. That becomes them. And so you're just threatening them and their idea of themselves when you don't wear a mask, when you question whatever it is they do. And that's why I was amazed when I see these videos of people go out in public and stand on a street corner and literally will argue with basically any random nut job who comes up with the crop blue hair and they're going to scream, and they just have a scream fest. And it's just, I don't understand the mentality of either side of that, but I certainly could never imagine going out there and thinking that's going to be effective, that you're going to sort of take on all comers.
Yeah, I think because they want a viral moment.
It makes no sense.
Page
there you go. Yeah. Because if you're not out there filming and trying to get some viral video of somebody going off on you, I can't imagine that it's worth it. But people do it in politics. They do it in Black Lives Matter. They do it in these mask wearing crap. They will literally engage the general public, just any person from the general public, in what is in effect a nonsensical discussion where nobody's making any sense. Yeah. No, there's no terms are even understood or agreed to. And that's what passes for public discourse in social media and everywhere else.
Yeah. With the mask thing, one of the things they've been doing with the mask thing is there's articles that have been coming out and they've been having these discussions on CNN panels where the theme is how QAnon gave rise to the anti-mask movement. So it's another example of throwing it in the QAnon bucket to make one part of society completely reject it before even thinking at all, simply because they're being told that it came from a certain group that they despise.
White supremacists.
Yes. Basically, that's the reaction. Racist, white supremacist.
Yes.
I got to go back to this because I noted it and I got to ask you about it before we get out of here.
Sure.
Black holes, bunch of BS. Elaborate if you could.
Well, are you an astrophysicist?
No, not at all.
No, I'm not an astrophysicist. I do play one on TV. I bet I slept at a Holiday Inn Express. For me, when I read about these black holes, this sort of, it's just a theory, okay? It's just a theory. And like everything else in these astrophysics, they make a prediction and then they make an observation. And the observation is never as they predict. And so then it changes again, that they have yet a new thing. And if this concept of a black hole, if it was true, right, if there could actually be this thing where it all got sucked in and no different than dark matter and all this other stuff, well, they have supposed situations where there's two black holes near each other. Okay, it's like, well, how can you have two black holes?
Doesn't it just quickly swallow everything?
Yeah, they would just all get sucked into it. How long is a black hole? But all these things, the black hole is no different than dark matter. The reason they had to even create the thing was they predicted this X, Y, and Z would happen, and then they make the observations of these far off galaxies and the stuff spinning around, and the shit's not in any way like they thought it would be. So they place a giant black hole at the center of it to make it mathematically make sense. And then when they make another observation based upon the idea that, well, they got to put a second black hole. Actually, there's another one over here.
Fudge? I didn't know it was like a fudge.
It's just like dark matter.
Mark.
It's just like dark matter, where they make an observation and then they make a theory, and then they with their theory they go to make a new observation and it doesn't work. And so, well, how come nothing fits with what we should be seeing? It's because there's dark matter everywhere.
Thing we don't know.
There's dark matter.
Yeah.
So it's like,
well, how do we ever prove it?
Just call it a black hole.
Right. And so really, they just need a new theory.
Right. How do these things revolve around this? What's holding them together? Oh, it's a giant black hole. And so they're all, okay. I see. So it's that. It's just like dark matter, dark energy, all these things that are just a mathematical construct necessary to keep their basic theory together.
Do you have an alternate theory? Like, what's the basic theory? I mean...
Well, I don't come into the theories. I think the electric universe theory is pretty good. It seems to have the electric universe theory seems to have pretty good predictive value.
But what is that electric universe theory?
That's really more of an electrical system as opposed to this giant gravity matter theory. It's more of these things are very well explained, the things you can observe. And they've actually done pretty good predictions with the electric universe theory with regards to it.
Similar to that?
Well, the charges can be scaled, and so they can do a lot of actual experiments with electricity, and they can scale it up pretty well, and then they can know how to react, as opposed to these black holes, dark matter things, which is strictly just a mathematical load of crap. They just make up. The electric universe theory actually has a lot of practical experiments that demonstrate the theories that could easily scale. And when you look at it, it's like, oh, wow, actually, those are pretty good explanations. Now, I'm not saying that things complete, and I'm not claiming to be an expert. I'm just saying that the reason there's so much resistance to it is because it blows apart all of these quarks and this and that and 20 different dimensions and all those things. The only reason those exist is to continue to maintain the standard Big Bang explosion theory. In order to keep that going, you have to constantly get more and more extreme.
It doesn't mean that it doesn't blow up the idea of like galaxies and solar systems and stuff. No.
It's just saying that
these
forces are operating.
Force?
Yeah, right. That these forces are operating are more electromagnetic forces as opposed to all this other stuff and these things you can observe. And like I said, it's back to the same concept that they want to hang on to this Big Bang theory. They desperately want to hang on to it. I don't know why, but people's careers are built on it. Entire careers, 40 years careers writing about it. What happens if it turns out you were just wrong for 40 years? People, they're not going to be okay with that.
Plus, it's not just that, but it undermines faith in the stuff that you're told.
Oh, well, yeah, of course, all that stuff with the space. It's nonsense. There's no way to explain how.
Can we ask you about that? Oh, we talked about the moon landing already.
Well, if there's space, if it's a vacuum, well, I think I told you how, look, Apollo 13, they tell us that they were freezing in that capsule on the way back. Well, that's not possible if you're sitting in a vacuum and you have solar radiation hitting a tube. And you have 3 grown men inside a small space. It will be getting extremely hot in there. It will not be getting cold.
That's what I thought about the buggy. The buggy doesn't have a radiator.
Well, it's a perfect thermos. See, it's a perfect thermos with additional heat being added at all times.
Oh, yeah.
It's a perfect
even just
thermos.
breathing would make it hot.
Your body just sitting there at 98 degrees. You're going to be getting very warm inside of a perfect thermos for days on end with solar radiation hitting you. And they claim it was freezing cold in the capsule. That's not possible with a vacuum right outside. It's not possible. There's no way to transfer the heat from the capsule into a vacuum. It doesn't work. And so all these crazy things like that ridiculous movie Apollo 13 where they had like a bent coat hanger and a used condom and all this duct tape and stuff. They were supposed to fix it.
How can you sit through that stuff? Do you ever have
it's comedy.
A companion and sit there and like ruin movies for everybody? I do
it's
that.
It's comedy.
Ruin everything for everyone. Yeah.
No, but I mean, that would be my reason. That's why this idea that there's some super vacuum out there. How does the atmosphere stay on the Earth? It gets thinner and thinner and thinner.
The magnetosphere, that's what
it should drop out.
Say, it's totally electrical. That's why. It's the magnetosphere.
Right.
The Earth is a giant spinning magnet. It's an electrical generator.
Yeah, there's also, and they have pretty good theories about how that might be able to hold in and stuff like that. But, you're not even satisfied with that? I'm saying I haven't looked into it closely enough. I don't
neither. I'm just making this up, but it just seems right.
Yes, exactly. No, they have basic explanations that make sense with the things that you and I can experience as opposed to this weird science fiction thing that completely contradicts all the basic laws we can operate with. You set a vacuum up, you make a thermos. It stays warm. Now, that's not even a perfect vacuum. Well, space is a perfect vacuum. How the hell are you going to get cold when you've got a heat source inside? It doesn't make any sense. And so all those kinds of things when it comes to astrophysics and all that stuff, it's just a mathematical construct. And they're hanging on to it by making it more and more complex.
Yeah, and with technology like virtual reality, maybe they had it back then, I don't know. But with that kind of technology, they've done studies where they put people in these virtual reality masks, and if you've ever done one of these, it's very interesting. And in the studies, they found that 6 months later or something like that, the people who were involved in them could not differentiate between what was real and what happened in the virtual reality simulation that they were in. And if this type of technology exists, then you could put people in it. They could think they're going up to space, and you could create any reality of that adventure that they went on that you wanted, and they could come back and be the ambassadors of whatever made-up message in this fake reality that you created. And they would
this
think
is all a simulation? Is that the next step?
It's all a simulation, and they thought it was
real.
Well,
I want to ask a question about that. So, Legal Man, do you have an opinion on whether this, or just a gut feeling on whether the technology that we are witnessing unfold and is probably going to accelerate and blow our minds within our lifetimes, do you feel like it's reasonable that just this human beings just built that, or do you think it's getting to the point where it's implausible?
I go back and forth on that. I suspect there's alien technology, but there's no proof of it. I also suspect that as we discussed last time when I was on, that the history we're given of this world is completely fake. And so for all we know, there may be technology from a previous cycle that's still around. That still could have been human, but it's still around. And I think the only problem they have with technology is that they have to have a credible way to release it into the people. I suspect the technology they actually have is way, 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 way further advanced than anything they're going to tell us, and that they have to make it look believable that it's breaking out in these, they had a breakthrough here and a breakthrough there, and they kind of come out with, they knew this and amazing this. And they're just trying to leak it out in a way that seems credible. And whether or not it's alien or not, like I said, there's no way to know. But it could easily, like I said, just exist from a previous cycle. There's no way to know.
I bought that book you recommended, Hidden Archaeology, but it's quite intimidating. It's gigantic.
I told you it's big.
I know you did.
Yeah.
And I'll have to just crack it. But it reminded me, and I then immediately tweeted at you an article that it was a story that just stuck in my mind because I could not figure it out. An old man, maybe he was a professor or something like that, an archaeologist up in, I don't know where it was, Minnesota or something, he died. And when he died, they just invaded his home. They sealed it up.
Oh, yeah,
and they took out all of his archaeological finds. They took everything. It was so crazy. Like Tesla. Yeah, exactly.
Just like Tesla. They do this all the time. They do it all the time.
Do you know Legalman who has Tesla's papers
were given to?
I've heard different rumors. I don't know. I know that allegedly Trump's uncle or something was involved with it or something.
And then he was an MIT guy.
I found some newspaper articles from 1950, 1940s, 1930s, and there's articles about Tesla developing this X-ray technology, and then Tesla dies, and then in the 1950s, there's articles about John Trump, and it's describing the exact same technology, and the articles about how John Trump used this X-ray technology to cure cancer.
Well, there you go. Well, I mean, it's no different than Royal Raymond Rife. If you just go down the list, it's always the same set of players using the same systems and then hiding all the information from the people and misleading them and sending them down rabbit trails and dead ends. And it's always the exact same pattern. Always. It's never varies.
It really is. And with Royal Rife, he did that. He had that. Basically, the way that he did it would shake
Who's he again?
He's a guy who allegedly, he claimed to have cured cancer in a number of people back, I think, in the 20s, and then he just got blackballed. And
with the frequencies?
It would shake the cells to death, essentially, how he did it. And it's called a Royal Rife machine. But fast forward to 2014, a study's published by Arizona State, and they're describing how they might have a potential cure for cancer if you shake the cells to death through these vibrational frequencies. And they're describing exactly what Royal Rife talked about and said he used to cure people from 1920. And they're just doing it again in 2014.
Sure. Well, the amazing thing about the Royal Raymond Rife story to me was the piece of equipment he created. This unbelievable, fascinating microscope that he could look at that was really better than an electron scanning microscope back then that you could look through in real time and watch. And he assembled a few of it. It's unbelievably elaborate.
What was it?
It's crazy. You got to go back and you can pull the medical journal when he actually when he posted some of the screenshots, he had like the pictures of he was able to look at. That's why he was able to do all that research, because first of all, he created this unbelievable piece of equipment, which then, of course, I think it was Flexner and those guys went around and basically harassed him, and they took all of his equipment. He only had a couple of them that had even been made, and now they're nowhere around. But it's the piece of equipment he made that was so amazing that allowed him to sit there for months and months and years looking at these things at real times and trying these different frequencies on them and seeing if it worked. And so he had to, in effect, build his scientific lab first. And it is the most incredible. You can go back and get pictures of it. And it's just this amazing array of optics that he set up that allowed him to get this magnification that was unbelievable. And like I said, I went and looked at the actual journal that it was posted in to make sure that it wasn't just a total load of crap. And there it is. And, they presented it. I think it was in the 30s. And, they had some slides that he created with his machine. And there used to be a fantastic video available on him on YouTube. They've pulled it off years ago now on Royal Raymond Rife. And I think you can still buy it on the web, but it's not available free anymore. He's a fascinating character if people want to look into that guy.
Would you not agree? I want to look into it. I'm totally intrigued because it's very hard for me to believe that they really don't understand cancer at all. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's probably like the same as everything else, that when you have a false paradigm you're operating under, you're never going to find the right answers. And that's always the trick they use. They make sure that everybody is looking inside a box that has no answers.
Yeah. I did read a book by Nancy Turner Banks, which I might have recommended to you last time. It's something exploding the AIDS cancer paradigm.
AIDS, opium, and diamonds.
Yeah,
or something.
She wrote
That's
too.
a great book she read.
I read the other one. I don't know if it was the same, but and she talks about that paradigm, saying that it's apoptosis and necrosis, and it's how your cell responds to the radical oxygen.
Right.
Like, she just explains it,
Right.
And that's that. So then after that, I was like, oh, so if you have healthy, subcellular health, like that's the best thing you can do. And how do you do that? And it's antioxidants and stuff. It's pretty clear, but it doesn't seem like the medical establishment focuses on that. If you ask a doctor, that I asked a doctor once about that kind of thing, and she said, we didn't really learn about nutrition or any of that, and I can't really speak to that. Yeah. And I was like, but I mean,
I have a good buddy that I've known for decades, and he was at Johns Hopkins in the 80s. And he said he had people there, older guys who were aware of the cell phone problem, and they said, oh yeah, they're seeing a huge increase in these cancers on the side of the head close to the cell phone where the people were using them because it's so damn dangerous. And of course, all that stuff gets wiped away, and the dangers of cell phones are just ignored. And the fact that there's in each one of the little sheets you get, it tells you don't put the thing up against your head, and everyone just runs around with the cell phone jammed up against their head. It's just idiots. And the information just doesn't get out there. Yeah, it's the same thing with the AIDS.
You say that though, and they call it a QAnon conspiracy theory.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, I mean, you're never going to be able to get truth out there without them being ready with 1,000 different systems to completely and totally discredit it. They're set up to do that. When you lie for a living, like the government and the people who run things, you know how to lie, and you know how to counter lies, and you prepare for lies, and you prepare for truth, and they make
the job
sure.
Description of spies and CIA agents.
This takes us full circle to where we started in the original show that we did together, which is it's like they are different people. Like, they don't think of us as people. They can just relieve themselves of because my guess is they don't look at themselves and think, I'm an immoral bastard.
No, they think what they're doing is right.
They think, I'm saving the world, and that person is too stupid to realize that she needs to be sacrificed, or it's only the collective number matters, or, the vision of the future is going to be better without things like you or whatever.
Yeah. I think it's a combination. I really think the vast majority of the kind of foot soldiers who make it all happen, they're just oblivious narcissists who like being on the winning team. They like the rewards. I think the number of people who are really, really sort of psychopathic actors and or something else, I think it's a small number. But if you remember in The Wolf of Wall Street, if you remember his explanation for how he justified in his own mind ripping the postman off and everything else with his penny stocks, is that he felt he was better able to spend their money than they were.
Yeah.
And that it's just a kind of a throwaway line in the movie, but I think there's a lot of that where people they're very, very selfish, and they don't really think about the harm they're doing. It's so sort of amorphous and non-concrete to them. I think there's a large number of them who, if you actually brought the individuals up to them and showed the devastation they were wreaking at a personal level, you might be able to reach some of them. A lot of them would not care, but I think a lot of them might really be disturbed because they just never really thought about it. I think there's a huge number of those kinds of people.
And I sometimes wonder, what is the moral culpability of oblivion? I feel like let's put it in terms of God, right? Morality is, how is God going to judge you? Surely he gave us the tools, or even if morality emerged over 10,000 years of civilization or hundreds of thousands of years of human existence, morality has to be something we're capable of, or it wouldn't be the fundamental concept. So oblivion, mindless, self-absorbed oblivion, should be something that is controllable. People are aware of it, or we could not have the kind of widely recognized morality that we have. And I would say, so maybe I differ with you a little bit in what human nature must be, or our capacity must be. But I also think that what's happening right now in the past couple of decades is, or centuries maybe, is mastering the art of psychology, where I saw one government document say enhancing dysfunctional subcultures. I would say enhancing dysfunctional characteristics. And then, of course, blaming us for having those. Like the revelation of the method doesn't really, are you really responsible for accepting what they're doing to you if they spent a lot of time making you incapable of recognizing it?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, the esoteric histories, some of them say that the people who they call adepts, they left society 2,500 years ago. They withdrew because the people are unreachable, and that this always happens in these cycles, and that eventually the people become unreachable sort of en masse, and there's no point trying to wake them. And so they just kind of withdraw. Now, what is the moral culpability? That's, again, that's a very complicated question with regards to what does this world actually consist of? In a manifest duality, you've got to have good and bad. It's impossible to avoid. You've got to have right and wrong in order to have a concept of it. And whether there's punishment for it is, again, kind of a Barnum statement, right? I mean,
but people,
what is
people
punishment?
don't recognize it, though.
But what is punishment? That's the real issue, right? What is punishment? Because forget the fact that maybe you could imagine you could figure out what's right and wrong. The real issue is, what is punishment? What does it mean? Is it this idea that you're going to burn? Is it this idea that there's going to be pain? Maybe the life I'm experiencing right now is my punishment. I don't know, right? I mean, this is the issue, is like, what is the punishment? I believe in cause and effect, because cause and effect made sense.
Well,
without cause and effect, nothing works.
I think it's its own punishment, because we're accepting this thing that is hurting us in a real way. Like, it hurts me to live like this.
That's my point, is that what does the punishment look like? It's just, is it really this very, very low level kind of concept that people have where you're going to go down in multiple levels of maybe not. Maybe that's just something they've concocted. Maybe the system's absolutely nothing like what we think when it comes to punishment. We just don't know. I mean, there's no way to know. Only thing I have confidence is there is cause and effect. There is cause and effect. I know there's cause and effect because if there's not cause and effect, I can't even think. It's not even possible. I wouldn't be able to have a logical sequence in my mind.
But then it does go back to that question of consequences. If there are no consequences, it's like
cause and effect.
An unenforceable law. It can't be a law.
It's cause and effect. That would mean that consequences are unavoidable. As opposed to there would be no consequences. All consequences are unavoidable. You're going to get the consequence. It's going to happen. You can't get away from it. Cause and effect. And no matter what happens, you're going to run into the consequence.
That's an interesting point. And then that's how you can explain morality to someone, but they don't believe you. When you say taking this shit right now, no, it's going to lead to the destruction of all humanity or human enslavement forever. If you try to explain to somebody that willingly giving up all semblance of physical, personal integrity up to your face holes, that is going to have a permanent deleterious effect on the difference between human beings and slaves or animals or whatever, people don't believe you. But the consequences will happen, and I don't, what difference,
It's going to split society. We touched on this briefly earlier. There's going to be part of society is going to go one way with vaccines and brain chips, and the other part of society is going to go back to nature, and it's going to be two completely opposing societies.
I think we're going to end up in the tunnels, and that's why they did away with the SATs.
Like Demolition Man.
You have to just walk the walk to get into the colleges, and just doing an SAT isn't going to do it. And we are Demolition Man, The Matrix. They're all tunnel societies. Total Recall. Mm-hmm. Every dystopian future has been painted for us as you're either in the tunnel or you're eating at Taco Bell like the fancy people.
All right, I got one more question.
Sure.
Before we get out of here. You talked about cycles a number of times. Do you believe that the Earth has built up its technology and blown itself up over and over and over again? I know there's some people that believe that theory, and it's not even an out there theory, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know if I would say I would go so far as to say that I believe it. I find it credible and potentially persuasive, but the problem I have with it is I just don't have any way to gather evidence about it outside of things like that forbidden archaeology that has a lot of stuff. And so for me, I look at it and I say, that is a very credible plausible explanation for the way this place is. And it doesn't mean there might not be another better explanation. I just haven't heard one yet. So my working theory is that's the case, but I keep a very open mind about things. Yeah. And if people present things that say makes that like, oh, that's ridiculous, and they show me something like, you're right, that is ridiculous. I'm not going to believe that anymore. I've been wrong many times in the past about stuff when I believe standard stuff. But I would say if you put a gun to my cat's head and said, choose, I'd say, yeah, that's probably what it is. I'd say, yeah, that's, if I had to guess right, I would say, yeah, it's been very long cycles. And it gets built up and then it gets washed and then it start the thing over again. And like every single time you start it,
a certain level and you blow up, you got to start all over again.
Yeah, I think the nature of human nature and the experience we're having is such that every single time you start it, there's absolutely no question it's going to blow apart. The only question is how and how long. That's the only questions that are open is how long is it actually going to take before it blows up and what is the actual way it's going to blow up. And it doesn't mean it ends in some giant thing where it blows up. Maybe people starved to death at one time. Maybe they screwed the water.
Here you go again, giving us hope.
Yeah, it could be anything. This is why we know your kids are going to be okay.
Well, this is right.
Blowing
and
up
that's
in a
my
nuclear
deal.
explosion, you might starve to death.
Well, I think about it all the time. I often sit and I think, okay, if I was sitting here and a nuclear bomb went off, right, and there's a flash and I was vaporized, okay, what would I actually experience? Well, I don't know. I mean, it feels like I'd still be here. My body'd get blown away, but whatever it is, my mind, it can't get incinerated. And so for me, that's the difference between me and a lot of people is that I just don't believe in the single life kind of me and this is my body and all, and that's all there is. And I die, go in the ground. And I just don't believe any of that. And so a lot of the things don't bother me at the same kind of level. They just don't bother me. The fact that we may be living through the very end of a cycle, to me, that's actually kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of cool.
It is interesting.
It's like Steve Buscemi's character in Armageddon, where he has a seat. He has the best seat.
Right.
For the end of
I had
the world.
A great seat. Why'd you bring me in? What are you doing? I had a great seat. Honestly, I'm okay now. You gotta
get real zen to just kick back and watch it all happen.
Yeah.
It's coming for everybody. I mean, it's coming for everybody. It's a topic people don't like, but the reality is it's coming for everybody. You better spend some time making peace with it. It's coming for everybody. There's a great. I'll tell you one more funny, I guess, parable that I think's a great one. And like I said, I kind of like the yoga tradition. And the guy comes and he has a great yogi over to his house for dinner, and he shows him this big thing, and he's please bless us. And the yogi says, I will bless you. May you die, and then your son die, and then your grandson die. And he goes, what the hell? I bring you in here for this, and he goes, what? You would prefer something else? I thought I was wishing you good luck. Would you prefer that your son die before you? Would you prefer that your grandson die before your son? I thought I was giving you a blessing. And that's just so classic because everybody thinks it's not going to happen it's going to happen to all of us. And you might as well spend some time making peace with it because it's coming.
I do think that's what's so crazy about the COVID thing, that it's just like 99% of the people who die are dying of death anyway. They're just dying of death. And they need to... Like, I expected the old people to be like, all right, don't freak out. I've been around, I see it
I had
coming.
A good run.
Yeah, and they're prepared. They should be. I feel sorry for them. So I'm like, have you not been preparing?
Right. It's just be horrible to live in that kind of fear of something that is absolutely inevitable.
I can see through you at this point. Yeah,
part of the fear for them is the fact that they got isolated and left by themselves. So
that's the part's horrible.
That's
the part that bothers me is that they're leaving these people alone to die of loneliness, and it's horrible.
It's really the only thing you work for is to be able to have a peaceful end of life and have your children and
so
you
want
want harmony.
Right? And so that.
Just basic human need to allow people to be with their elders when they're sick and dying. I mean, my God. Now, of course, in other cultures, they leave and go alone and be alone. There's a lot of cultures where they aren't supposed to.
But you're prepared for that. See,
but that's your culture.
The problem with this
that's your culture.
is that what's so traumatic about this is it upended what everyone from kids and going to college to old people dying to it upended. And I've always said that I can handle absolutely anything, but I need to prepare. you know, just need a little time and some sleep and coffee. And that's
well, what does the Bible says? It can come. He'll come when you least expect it, middle of the night. So I mean,
like a thief in the night.
You got to be prepared at any time. You know, you go to sleep and not wake up, and it's really not that bad a way to go. Very few people get that one. That's a great one. You know,
even the kids. That's the evening prayer. It's the bedtime prayer. If I die before I wake.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, really? You want to teach kids that? All right. Well, it's actually later for you guys than it is for me. But how fun is that? It's so fun, Legal Man.
Yeah, thanks for talking
I really
to us.
appreciate
It's always a pleasure.
It's always good to kick it around with people.
And we
enjoy it.
Love. I hate to call them rants, but they're kind of ranty. But I love them because they're so intelligent and so passionate. And of course, I do love your masterful use of vulgarity.
You have well-timed swearing.
Oh, it's so good.
And
he's not. You can tell he's not really that much of a cursor. You know, like Vulgarian. It's just suitable for the tone.
Sometimes when I get upset, I do let loose. You know, it's actually when I've heard it and I've listened to it, I've actually felt a little guilty about some of the women I've had relationships with, because when I've gotten a little upset, I'm pretty intimidating. I listen to it. I think, wow, that's really kind of unfair to be on the other side of that. It's
funny. I hate to break it to you.
Well, I understand. It's funny because I'm not directing in a personal manner at somebody. You know what I'm saying? It's like, wow, that's really a torrent to have to face. And I do tend to get a little bit connected to it sometimes. I just think about how crazy it is what they're doing to us sometimes.
But it's funny because you're alone. You're alone, and you're just like, and then, and it's just like, what is happening in this guy's office? And he's just like getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and then at the end you're like, that's it, that's the show. So I'm telling you, everyone from my sister to my mother to my son loves the quash. It's funny. It's like it reaches across generations.
It's what?
Oh, yeah. How can people find it?
Find the quash?
Oh, well, you know, it's pretty much on any of the podcast places. You can get it on Apple or Spotify, any of the places. And I don't have my website up, but if you come to my Twitter site, it's Legal Man at US Law Review, I've got it linked on there. And like I said, it's in any place you listen to a podcast. If you're a podcast listener, just go on and put in the quash and it'll come up.
You're like me. I think you're like me. I just tweet late at night, and like that's where the action is. And I'll be tweeting, and sometimes you'll tweet back. I'm like, this guy, I don't know anybody who's up as late and as early as I am. And
I pop on. I like to get on the Twitter, and I enjoy the people. That's the reason I even get on Twitter. Is that I like having a group of people who, like you guys, you know what's going on, and the news breaks and it's preposterous. Instead of running off and taking it seriously, you can laugh about how absurd it is that they're expecting anyone to believe this stuff.
How long are we going to be on there still? Twitter, I can't imagine that they're going to let this go on.
You got to be careful. You got to be careful of the kinds of stuff. And I'm very careful too. And, at any time they can push a button, but I'm pretty careful. What's the old adage? A lawyer that can't represent his own rights and protect himself sure can't protect his client.
I'm going to ask you to do me a favor then. If you would, if you ever see me, and I bet Binkley appreciate the service too, need a word of caution, please do not hesitate to pass that. You can be rude. I do not care. Shut the fuck up. Whatever. I don't care. But I need, I don't want to get...
That's the kind of thing I would normally DM. I would normally DM someone in order to not call even additional attention to it. That's what I normally do.
Yes, although,
I just shoot them a DM. Hey, you might want to consider this tweet. You might want to pull that back. Yes, it's a good idea.
All right. Well, thanks for talking with us.
Hey, great.
Everybody check out The Quash. It's a great podcast. And
the best. Everybody's favorite. It's actually, I have to say, I always tell people when they listen to our podcast, one time and you're hooked, it'll be your favorite. I am going to tell you, I've never seen more people react that way than mine to yours has actually taken, I think, that baton. But it's fine. I give it, it happened to me. It's my favorite.
We had a great response. Our listeners definitely enjoyed your first appearance, and I'm sure they will this one as well. You can find us at thepropreport.com. or your favorite podcasting platform. We will talk to you guys next time.
Great. Thanks so much. Take care, y'all.
See you later.
Thank you, you too.